The Fractal Design North XL just recently launched, expanding and refreshing the already popular North case. I have to say, the whole wood-themed PC hardware is certainly trendy right now, as there are a handful of companies doing this as well. Now in this video, I do also have to mention a couple sponsors that I had. First of all, it's Fractal Design. They sent over the North XL case unit here for me to work on and actually review. And then there's also Titan Rig, where I normally buy a lot of my water cooling hardware from. And they sent over a few things for me to test and showcase in this video. And lastly, my friend Stuart from GGF Events, he lent me a bunch of his radiators for me to test as well. So very helpful. And of course, I will have everyone linked down below. Now in this review, I'll be running through the specs, the features, and something that I'll be focusing a lot on is what hardware can you fit inside the case. So that will include air coolers, AIO liquid coolers, and also custom water cooling. So let's get started. The North XL comes into the market at $180 compared to its smaller North case, which I've seen between $140 to $150 right now, depending on where you buy it from. The North XL does have the options for tempered glass or mesh panel that comes with a 280mm side fan bracket, which was a feature that carried over from the original North. As for the color options, you do get black with walnut or white with oak accents on the front panel. Visually, it looks the same as the North and is about 36% larger in volume. As for the wood slates, they are pretty solid and done very well. I myself here did get the black colored case with the tempered glass option. Now, something that irks me a little bit is that the white case has black interiors. This sort of creates some color conflicts in my opinion when trying to do themed builds. So I think this should have been all white in and out with the oak. The inside does change the game quite a bit as the XL does accommodate eATX motherboards while the North only supports up to an ATX. As for cooling, you can now fit more 120 and 140mm size fans and radiator variants, which does open up your options and makes water cooling more interesting. So let's take the case apart and see what we have. On the top is where your power button is, along with your USB-C, USB 3.0, headphone, and mic jack. You do have a quick removable mesh panel, which underneath is where you can mount up to 3 120s, 2 140s, or 2 180mm fans. The mounting positions are also labeled with 12, 14, and 18 to make things easier. Bottom side, you have a quick removable dust filter for the power supply. Not much else going on here. At the rear end of the case, you have the PSU mounting bracket, which you undo and secure via these two screws. On the left of it, there is a cable strap you can use as well for managing external cables. The back side of the case is where you'll find your front I/O cables, a removable SSD tray that fits up to two 2.5-inch drives. Then there are two 3.5-inch hard drive cages at the bottom under the PSU shroud that is also removable, and a built-in fan hub at the top which have the 3 front pre-installed fans connected by default, and 6 grommets for your cables to pass through. The PSU shroud also extends all the way to the front panel with a cutout to accommodate radiator placement, which we will get to later, and there's also plenty of ventilation holes for airflow to circulate from the front panel fans through the bottom for your hard drives, as well as if you mount your power supply with fan facing up. The front panel is of course removable to allow fans and radiator installation, and Fractal does include 3 of their 140mm aspect fans pre-installed to give you a bit of a head start on building. The dust filter is also detachable to the front panel as it just snaps on and off with ease. GPU clearance is up to 413mm long if you don't have any front-mounted radiators. However, if you do want to mount radiators up front, that clearance will vary based on the radiator thickness. For example, a good GPU to test is the ROG Strix 4080 or 4090, because it is probably one of the longest, if not longest cards on the market, coming in at 357mm, and I can squeeze in an EK P360M, which would be a 44mm thick radiator. Okay, so now I want to talk about cooling hardware. And in my honest opinion, when it comes to large cases, I think the discussions and conversations revolving air coolers and AIO all-in-one liquid coolers is actually not that very interesting, because in large cases, I'm going to have to preface this by saying what large cases are. Large cases, I mean like mid-towers and above. So anything that is not ITX or SFF, like small form factor builds, it's because you just have so much room to work with. You can literally get something like this, the largest air cooler on the market, slap it in and call it a day, it would work fine. Same thing with AIO liquid coolers. You can get the largest AIO radiator-wise that the case is designed to support and mount, slap it in and you'd be fine. But when it comes to the conversations of custom water cooling, I think that's where it gets a lot more interesting and more expansive, because the combinations and choices of hardware that you're able to choose from and mount and throw in is going to be just a lot more. So let's dive in. For example, the Noctua NH-D15 here is one of the biggest and most powerful air coolers you can get on the market, and it fits inside the XL no problem with plenty of headroom for more if you need an even bigger cooler. All-in-one liquid coolers like this 420 ProArt from Asus also fits inside the front panel with ease, which is supposed to be the maximum size radiator supported on the North XL. But there is a very minor clearance issue with some top-mounted fans. For example, 3 standard-sized 120mm fans can successfully be mounted, but it will put a little bit of pressure on the AIO tubes as it doesn't quite clear it completely. And this would be the 120mm fans being pushed all the way back to the rear of the case. For 2 140mm fans, you'll have no problem with it since it doesn't span the entire length of the top panel. Now, I currently don't have any 180mm fans on hand to test, but I would imagine if you had dual 180s on top, you'd have the same clearance issues as 3 120s because math. It would use the entire length of the top panel. Additionally, the top panel can also hold a 360mm AIO radiator, no problem as well. Real quick before I talk about custom water cooling, this is going to be very extra for most people, but the cutouts for the PCIe slot covers were also designed to allow an 80mm fan mount. However, it will only work with 2-slot GPUs at most, as 3-slot cards like this 4080 Super FE will not leave enough space. Now, onto the more interesting topic, custom water cooling, since the choices for hardware combination is much more expansive. And having different size radiators here to test, I was able to verify the limits of these mounts and orientations inside the case. So here is the condensed summary with some of my recommended configurations. If you go with 140mm fans and radiators, then you can fit a slim 420mm on the front panel, such as an EKS420, which is about 30mm thick, but you cannot fit an EKP420, which is 44mm thick or more. If you wanted to add a second radiator on top, you can fit a slim EK280mm radiator with fans as well. A third slim 140 radiator should be able to fit with a fan as well in the back. If you wanted to go with 120mm fans and radiators, in the manual, Fractal showed that you can fit a 45mm thick 360 rad up top with fans, along with a 60mm thick 360 on the front panel. But I have evidence to show that this does not work. I had 2 EKP 360 rads on top and front panels, which means each of them are 44mm thick. With standard fans like these Noctua NF812s, you cannot fit them in, and it does not work. The most you can do is a slim 360 rad with standard fans on top and a thick 360 rad up on front as well, like the EKX360M that comes in at 58mm. And the 360mm rad on top, you will need to have your inlet and outlet ports on the rear of the case, because you're just not going to be able to access your fittings if they are in front, being blocked by the front radiator. And in this area, you can use a rear 120mm fan if you decide to go soft tubing, but if you go hard tubing like I did, you'd most likely want to leave this area empty so that you can actually have space for your hard tubes to run down. There is also a fill port access cutout on the top of the case. However, I think this fill port cutout is quite large at 26.5mm in diameter, and none of my fill ports and pass-through fittings actually fit here. And I will say that the ones I have are actually quite common. Now, there are several different types of fill ports out there, and I don't have every single one to test, so if you wanted to use this feature, just make sure you find the right one that fits. As for your pump and reservoir mount, that leaves you with 2 areas left: horizontal space between the GPU and PSU shroud, or vertical space right behind your front radiator. I tried running a few games, editing workflows and stress tests, and the temperatures are also very good in the North XL here, with my build running a 14700K and a 4090 FE within the same loop. There are 2 360mm radiators cooling both components, and the ventilation is very breathable, especially with these Noctua fans, as they do have a solid reputation on performance. Most applications and games will usually be either CPU heavy or GPU heavy only, which means that each of these components are going to have access to both 360mm radiators to themselves most of the time. In conclusion, I think the North XL is fine, but I don't think it lives up to the XL name. Do I wish it was bigger? Yes, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be too much bigger. Like, I'm not saying that it needs to be like a V3000 super tower or something like that, but I think it should be just big enough where it can handle and support the hardware comfortably as the manual claims. Now, would I still buy it? Yes, absolutely. If I was going for a wood-themed build like this, I would buy this. I would buy this over the regular North because simply of how much more hardware it can fit. And the North XL and the North Regular are both cases that I've reviewed now at this point, and I think they look nice. This one more particularly, it looks nice, it's easy to build in. I think the price is fair, and me being a custom water cooling enthusiast and being able to fit two large radiators like two 360s in here, even though if one of them needs to be a slim radiator, is great, and it can handle more than enough for the even highest end parts right now, like a 14900K or a 4090 like that. So, all right, that's all I have for now. Thank you for watching.